Welcome back, local Liberty viewers. It's time for another community chat segment. This is where we give you the chance to voice your concerns about issues that are important to you. Today on Community Chat, we are joined by Jean De Smet, former First Selectman and one of the founders of the Third Thursday Street Festival in Windham, Connecticut. Jean, it is great to have you. Tell me, you're here to talk about Bernie a little bit. Why did you support Bernie Sanders?
I think I supported Bernie because I generally lean towards supporting somebody a little outside of the norm. I ran myself as a Green Party candidate. I've always supported candidates who lose.
I know what that's like.
And Bernie actually is somebody who I've respected for many years. The first time I ever ran for office was probably like almost 35 years ago, say, and Bernie had already won in Vermont. And when we lost that election, we said, local politics, we all said, let's move to Vermont. Because Bernie had just won as a Democratic Socialist in Vermont. So we were like, yeah, he's standing on the right side of things. Democratic Socialists are right. Green Party is right. Alternative politics is the solution, as we're seeing in this campaign. Many millions of people are flocking to alternative political figures because mainstream's dead.
Many people say, though, and I've had this conversation because I've always been a third party supporter for many years. I've always voted for losing candidates, usually Libertarian or Green Party candidates, and they always lose, that I'm wasting my vote. Why bother? Shane, you're stupid. You're wasting your vote. You have to vote for one of the two major candidates. You got to vote for one of the lesser of two evils.
No.
Why do you disagree with that?
Of course not. Because what we're doing is influencing the dialogue at the very least. I went to the Mill Museum recently, and there's an exhibit on the Irish, and I'm Irish. I don't know if you're Irish or not, but a person told me her family always sang these Irish ballads about going to war, and they always lost. But they sang ballads about how right they were. So I guess I have a little bit of that in me. But, you know, some of us just keep sticking for the right cause. We're not very good at saying to ourselves, well, that's close enough. This is good enough. Let's compromise some more. No, somebody has to articulate the truth. Somebody has to articulate and stand for the values that we stand for, or we will never get close to achieving them. And so when a candidate like Bernie Sanders stands up, I'm going to support that because he's going to keep saying what needs to happen. And that's what we try to do in the Green Party as well. So
the idea to you of wasting a vote is not real to you? Because, for example, I was talking to a gentleman recently who regretted voting for Ralph Nader in a previous election where George W. Bush won. So he didn't like the conservative point of view, and he feels like that Ralph Nader took away from the Democrats, and they could have won that election. Right. What do you think?
Well, here we have a couple of things coming up here. First of all, Ralph Nader did not cost the election. Al Gore cost himself the election, and the Supreme Court cost him the election as well, but Al Gore didn't appeal the Supreme Court's rulings. But as Mr. Trump is figuring out, the whole thing is rigged from beginning to end. So this poor individual in Connecticut who voted for Ralph Nader had absolutely no impact on the national results. When Connecticut voted, every vote that Connecticut got went to Gore, no matter how we voted as individuals. So here we have the luxury. We should all be voting for whoever we want and knowing that it will not impact the election because the Democrats have total control of the outcome.
That's an interesting point of view. But let's imagine, hypothetically, though, we were in a state where that wasn't the case, where it's very close. Would you change your perspective then?
It would be interesting. I'm not sure because it would be much more challenging. And I really do think that the voters have the intelligence and should be relied on to think it through themselves and understand what means the most to them. And that's what should happen.
And what means the most to you? What platforms are you looking for? What issues matter that the major parties may not be talking about or barely talking about?
Well, yeah. Here's one that we were talking about all day in town recently. Natural gas, fracked gas pipelines, climate change, global warming. Are they talking about that?
I think the Democrats usually do. I mean, they play lip service to it, don't they?
Yeah, they're playing lip service, but I'm not hearing it as the major campaign talk, really, as a big issue. So that's a really huge issue. This is a life and death issue for all of us. It's a little bit intangible because if you're not living in Texas where you just got a foot of rain in a day, or if you're not in Oklahoma today where you just got thunderstorms and snowball-sized hail, You don't think impact. You don't feel the impact. It's really, and it's also very hard to see exactly what you can do. You know, if you walk instead of driving a mile, is that going to change the climate? You feel kind of useless. So it's a very big challenge. But this is something that can be addressed at the presidential level, and that's where it has to be addressed.
What other issues are of concern to you?
Well, universal health care. Hillary had her chance at that back when Bill was in office and set up a commission full of insurance executives to make a decision on how we can get to universal health care. And guess what they decided? Couldn't be done. And so ever since then she said, well, it can't be done. Well, that's the kind of thing where I'm saying you need somebody like Bernie to articulate, yes, it can happen. It can happen. We are working toward it. That's our goal.
What do you think about the other side's view on some of these issues where they say, well, climate change, we're going to ignore the deniers for the moment who are in a hole, I don't know what they're doing. But we'll say people that acknowledge climate change, it's a real issue, it's actually occurring, but some of the solutions might cause more harm than good.
Well, I don't know who would say that. I mean, it will cause economic harm.
Right,
and that's
which would hurt poor people.
It could, or it could hurt the companies who are making a lot of money. Like the fracking companies aren't even making a lot of money now. But I think we have to change the whole dynamic. Here in Willimantic, we're being asked if we want a fuel cell. We're not really being asked, but we've decided to give an opinion on whether or not we want a fuel cell, and it'll change. It'll be a natural gas-fired fuel cell. So here we are in one of the poorest towns in the state of Connecticut, and we're having to decide whether we want to do the high road and save the world from global change and fracking, or do we take the money? Because we're really dirt poor.
Right.
So all the environmental questions are rigged by the fact that there's no penalties for pollution, there's no rewards for cleanness. And so, of course, we always lose on that equation. The poor people lose. So we have to change the equation. We have to factor in all those other factors which are not being counted right now.
Right. I mean, in economics, they would call it an externality. The pollution is an externality. The people that are buying the product from the company and the company that's selling their product, they're benefiting. There might be this pollution being made, but who cares? It doesn't matter to us. Right. Some other person has to deal with that.
Yes.
And you think that the candidates you're supporting are actually talking about this issue?
I hope so. It's hard because one of the problems, I'm sorry, media is the problem. They choose what to report on. I don't know if you've been involved in protests and things like that. Probably most of you viewers have. If you're out there at a rally and you're protesting against this or that, the reporter comes up and they talk about, you can talk all you want about what you want them to talk about, and they talk about something else when they do the interview. They give you 30 seconds of off-topic stuff, and you're like, what did Jean wear today? Like, what? What does that have to do with anything, you know? And the same, they do that to each other. That's how the presidential campaign politics are going. They're sitting there picking on each other like little kids.
Oh, it's embarrassing.
I don't know what issues they're talking about because I don't hear what they're talking about.
They often don't talk about issues. They talk about things that just don't matter. They talk about Trump's hair. They talk about what this guy's wearing, or what makeup she has on. Yeah. Oh, is Hillary wearing the right dress today? Yeah, I don't care.
No, Bernie's hair's a mess all the time. Oh my goodness. You know?
I can't vote for him. He needs a haircut.
Right. So it's craziness. But, you know, as third-party candidates, and Bernie's been a third-party candidate his whole life, so at some point you have to figure out where do you make the compromises that you will make. And so Bernie has made one. He has decided to become a Democrat and run as a Democrat. So good for him. So I changed to Democrat so I could support him, but I'm going to change back to Green.
Is it in this case, though, how has he really compromised his positions? Because he changed his party, right? But as far as I can tell, I haven't followed Bernie that closely until recently. His positions are relatively the same.
I think you're absolutely right. He's consistent, and that's one thing we should all really respect about him. There's the difference between, does a party represent certain points of view, or does a party represent, or is this about personality politics, right? So the two-party system has turned it into personality politics. The party doesn't stand for anything, as the Republicans can tell you right now. They have no idea what they're standing for. They don't like any of their personalities. The Democrats as well. It's been the big tent. So they don't mean anything as a party. Green Party means something. Libertarians, that means something. It doesn't matter who the candidate is. I can vote with confidence if it's on the Green Party.
Right. This is what I was drawn to when I was a naive little 17-year-old about to turn 18 during the 2000 presidential race. And, I became really interested in politics, and I found it really confusing. I was confused by the Democrats and the Republicans because I would look at, say, their platform. There is a platform somewhere, right? But if you look at the platform and you look at any individual candidate, you have no idea what they think. You have really no clue. There's Republicans that are pro-choice. There's Democrats that are pro-life. I mean, those are fundamental issues you associate with those parties. But a quarter of each party is the opposite. And for any given issue, this is the same way. And then when I turn to some of the third-party candidates, the Libertarians and the Greens, regardless of what you think of either of those parties, they have a much more consistent platform. I know when I'm voting for, I'm like, okay, yes, there's variation, but it's a much smaller variation. Like as you said, when the type becomes so big, and then it doesn't matter anymore. It's just like when a definition becomes so broad, well, it has no power. You don't know what it means anymore. It includes everyone.
That's why curse words change. Have they changed the ones you can say on the radio yet? They ought to update it.
Yeah, update it. Well, we don't do censorship here on Local Liberty. You can say whatever you want. Tell me about some of the struggles you faced running as a third-party candidate, or just running as a third party in general.
Basically, well, first of all, you don't get the media attention. Trump broke through that barrier, and I'm sure that's partly why Bernie is getting attention, because Trump was able to be so outlandish that the press covered him, which is outrageous that's what you have to do.
I know, it is outrageous.
It is. Locally or statewide, we've run candidates in the Green Party, and they've been excluded from debates. Actually, that wins us allies when people find out about it. They're so mad.
Really?
But they exclude us from the debates because they say you haven't raised enough money. Money is all that counts. Is that true? I guess it is. The state, as we're all learning, in the Democratic Party and Republican Party, they've set up all these barriers to how you can get the person you want elected, because they have their super delegates or their caucuses or whatever. State had all different plans. In Connecticut, if you want to run locally, they have these enormous barriers. They said, okay, we have campaign finance reform. Every candidate who runs gets money as long as they're a Democrat or a Republican. But if you're not one of those two parties, you get no money.
Right.
Unless you get X amount of signatures and X amount of dollars. So it's just totally prejudiced, and the whole system is rigged beginning to end. It's very frustrating. When I finally did win as first selectman, I ran on the bottom line party. So what we did was we took people from all different parties, ran them all as petitioning candidates. And we knew that we would all end up at the bottom line of the ballot. So we called it the bottom line party.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know the history there.
Yeah. So we're at the bottom of the ballot, we're the bottom line, but we didn't form a party. Because what we were saying was that we didn't stand for any one thing except local politics and people who will talk to each other and treat each other with respect and listen to everyone's thoughts and not vote by political party. So on the local level, we don't want parties, and many states don't have them at the local level. Connecticut does. So a state to state, everything's different. In Connecticut, whether you're running for dog catcher, you've got a party affiliation next to your name. At this level, we should know each other. We should know the candidates.
Right.
Like you saying, you're actually voting for people who are winning because you know who they are.
I knew. This election cycle, I actually voted for a number of people I personally knew.
Right. So we can do that at the local level. Forget the parties, take the party line off of there, and just run candidates, and we don't have to stand for anything that has nothing to do with local politics, right? So my stand on abortion has nothing to do with local politics.
That's an interesting point.
Right.
Another thing you mentioned, like sometimes a party's attached to these very strange positions, like the dog catcher. Why is a dog catcher a Democrat or Republican? Or me, a more personal example, I was helping my friend Doug Leary run for the registrar of voter. Why is that even a political position, the registrar? I don't understand this. This is bizarre.
Yep.
And then the system for the registrar was the Democrats and Republicans, it doesn't matter what they get. They automatically are there. It's such an obnoxious thing. It really made me angry.
There will be a Democrat and there will be a Republican registrar.
You're good to go.
Even though the Green Party got more votes than the Republicans, we will still never get a registrar. Well, not never. We can still run and try, but It's very difficult.
It's very difficult. When I was trying to help Doug run, I was handing out flyers all over town, handed out over 1,000 flyers, and I would talk to people, and I would tell them, oh, look, if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, don't worry, you're safe. Your guy's in there. If Doug, the only thing Doug can get is he can get a seat, a third seat. And
they don't get it.
They don't get it. I had one person, I was talking to the gentleman, he's like, oh yeah, well, blah, 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 this is good. Oh yeah, this is good. Oh, Doug's already in the office. He's already been helping. He liked everything he said. And then at the end of the day, and he nodded to everything I said. Okay, so are you vote for Doug? He's like, oh no, I vote straight line Democrat.
I always vote Democrat.
What? I just explained to him why you can vote for him and it's safe.
Well, I've learned over the years. It took me 4 elections to get elected. 5 actually.
Persistence.
Altogether 5. So it's a really hard time to educate people and bring people up to speed on complex issues like that. And as started out election number 2, I was running as a Green, and the Green Party was new, and so I spent 90% of my time talking to people, getting lots of head nods. Yep. I'm voting for you. You're a Democrat, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Green. What are you talking about? And so I really had to educate people. And this town has been really good because what's happened is people understand now that there's a lot of parties. And at one point we had 5 different parties running for first selectman. So it's been a really interesting dynamic. Now that bottom line is winning, people here are so against the 2-party system. We've turned it around, and what can we do to change it is very limited because they have the power. And they're not going to put themselves out of power.
I've noticed that myself. Ever since when I first started voting, I'm like, wow, there's a number of different parties on here. This is unusual. And I hear, from people from other states around the country that, oh, it's not that way here. It's even more difficult. The barrier is even higher to get on the ballot. It's virtually impossible. It takes so much effort, so much money, and this can't do it.
Yeah. We, Doug, Larry, and I, and anyone else can do this. So we do audits. We watch as towns recount the ballots. So we just observe them doing a recount. The state mandates 10% of the towns have to do a recount every election just to prove the machines haven't been messed with.
Interesting.
Because everybody I know in computers says, do not trust those machines. They can be tampered with at any time during an election day. So we go and we watch them physically count the ballots all over again. And it's astounding, especially in the cities. Straight line Democrat, straight line Republican. They've started counting the ballots. Instead of saying the names of the winners, they go all Democrat, all Democrat, all Democrat, all Republican, and put them in 2 piles. Because people don't, in Willimantic, Windham, up and down that thing all over the place. People never vote a straight party line.
Really interesting.
We've really broken that.
I haven't actually looked at the results, but that's true. That Willimantic, that it's not just a straight line.
Right.
Well, that actually makes me kind of happy about
it's very
that.
exciting because people are breaking out of the party.
So we're near the end of the segment today, Jean. What would you like to say about people that are still hesitant about going third party? What do you want to tell them?
I think I would tell them the same thing I would tell anybody else, which is vote your conscience. You should vote for your interests and your conscience and what you think is right. And that's what, if any party tells you you have to vote for less than that, then I would disagree. Because this is what counts. You know what's right. You know what the truth is. And that's how you have to vote. That's what should be representing you.
Jean, I agree with you completely. I can't vote for someone that I can't agree with their positions. I don't care if they're the lesser for 2 evils. I just can't do it. I can't support that candidate.
Oh, and I'll put in another pitch if I can.
Okay.
We will have a Green Party candidate for president, so it ain't over yet.
Do you know who your candidate's name is yet?
No, they haven't had the convention.
Haven't had the convention yet. They haven't had it for the Libertarians either. Either way, stay tuned to Community Chat for more local people on and talk about issues you're concerned about. Jean De Smet, it's been great having you. Maybe we'll have you again. Stay tuned, viewers.
We'll talk about Third Thursday next time.
Oh, well, maybe we will.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, local Liberty viewers. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Tell us what you think in the comments, and have a nice day.